Perhaps the major issue with the mainstream models of personality, those models that we use to first assess that we might be INFJ, ISTP, ESFP, ISTJ, and so forth and so on. Or other models that might be, popular in some circles, models that you're probably familiar with, objective personality, C.S. Joseph's model, and plenty of other models that have multiplied. The mainstream one remaining MBTI. They all have an issue in common, and this issue can be summarized pretty easily. They are not dynamic, okay? They are not dynamic. In the language of my latest book on the INFJ, The Infinite Soul, INFJ Life in the Modern World, which you can check at the first link below if you're curious to know more about, okay? These models are a reflection of what I call the restrictive attitude to type, what I also call the finite attitude to type. If this book is called The Infinite Soul, it refers to infinitude, not infinity, infinitude. Again, if you want to know more about this, check the book. Because the finite attitude to type, the restrictive attitude to type, the static models, tell us that an INFJ is supposed to have this list of characteristics, which we are mostly familiar with. Or an ENFP is supposed to have this list of characteristics, INTJ, ISTJ, and so forth. What's reassuring about those models is that, in the first place, they're quite easy to grasp. They usually allow us to more or less pin down our type fairly quickly, although of course some people find it a bit harder if they feel like they're on the cusp, or if they're sort of straddling two different types. It might take them a bit longer to identify what their type is. But there's something deeply reassuring, right? It's like returning to the womb. You're going back into a container. Your type becomes your container. It offers you protection in the shape of understanding yourself, in the shape of understanding other people. It has that membrane, you live with this membrane of protection, right? And the issue, of course, is just like a womb that you stay in for too long, or a box that you stay in for too long. It ends up, after a while, feeling like it's limiting you. And from then on, you have you have three choices, really. The first choice is to insist that this is the solution and witness your life becoming more and more impoverished over time. Less rich, more constricted and restrained by this box that has now become a straitjacket. Another possibility is to become cynical and to abandon types altogether, and sometimes become a crusader against the very idea of personality types. The third option, which is my favorite option, is to make your conception of type more dynamic. Realize that type blends into life and life blends into type. Something I like to say. I say that in The Infinite Soul as well. And that type shifts according to the way that we were brought up, the society we live in, the epoch we live in is very important, right? And I want to illustrate this by returning to this still somewhat mysterious fifth subtype of INFJ, which I sketched in a recent video. This fifth subtype I still have not found a name for, because I think this difficulty in finding a name for it is also a reflection of my still developing understanding of what this type is. Is it really a type? To call an INFJ a type, like compliant or solipsistic or secure or spiritualized, requires that we have a fairly confident notion of the fact that these are real families with traits. These traits evolve, but they are nevertheless recognizable so that they can be grouped into families. There's other families they have traits in common with, but they cluster around certain core themes, motifs, and traits. This possibly new kind of INFJ is one that I have described as having a relatively weak superego, which is really unusual for INFJs. INFJs tend to have strong superegos. They tend to easily feel like they are carriers of a heavy sense of impersonal duty, that they can easily fail themselves and fail others. They are prone to feeling guilt, sometimes also prone to feeling shamed, and they care about doing what's right. Okay, but this whole notion of having a strong conscience, a strong care about doing what's right, is a sign of a strong superego. And we know that having a superego that's too strong, what I call a tyrannical superego, is also one of the sources of INFJ neurosis, leaning insecure. Because NI is not a superegoic function. NI wants to kind of be fed everything and then do its own thing with it. It wants to be given freedom. It wants to not discriminate between good and bad, right? The discrimination between good and bad is really the work of FETI, okay, in the case of INFJs. So a tyrannical superego is a superego that says essentially, NI, you're a little bit dangerous. And your collaboration with SE, I don't really trust it. Let me intervene, make sure things are okay. And this is where you can end up being derailed from your normal and most empowering sense of self and sense of how you want to conduct your life. Now, this new INFJ, I call this new INFJ not just in the sense that this is likely going to be a new subtype, a fifth subtype to my nomenclature, but also because it is relatively new in terms of epochs. Like this is in a sense proof that type is not static, that the attitude to type that's finite and restrictive is wrong, right? That we should make it dynamic always. Type blends into life, but also into society and the evolution of society. And we can have literally subtypes of INFJs that did not exist before, did not exist in the 12th century, did not exist in antiquity, did not exist in the 18th century, but only starting to exist and become reasonably common in the 1990s and 2000s, 2010s. It's a difficult notion for someone who's so used to the restrictive attitude to type, but it's a notion that we really need to integrate if we are going to keep our notion of type dynamic. And so this new INFJ is really a new INFJ, right? If he or she really exists. And I'm really strongly inclined to believe they do. Has a weak superego. So the functions of judgment, which are, in my view, the main functional agents of the superego, FETI, are weak in these INFJs. These INFJs tend to be pure perception type people, which for a long time, in the eyes of people who considered the tyrannical superego to be the main enemy, and maybe even according to a discourse like my discourse, where I put so much emphasis on freeing up NI, let it operate unhindered. Well, this new type poses a challenge. They let NI operate unhindered. So how come that their situation in life seems to be so difficult? Why is inner emptiness, lack of desire, and a strong pervasive anxiety that is unlike the anxiety of the old neurotic INFJ dominate their picture? What can we learn from this? I will address this in the next video. In the meantime, if you want to check out my first book on the INFJ, The Ecstatic Soul, a new look at the INFJ personality, check it out below as well. That was my first book on the INFJ. And don't forget, Patreon is the lifeblood of my channel. I'd be so grateful for your support. Perks include access to a Discord server and bonus videos every 2-3 weeks just for patrons. If you like that and like the idea of helping me keep the channel going, check the link below to my Patreon. See you soon, guys. Bye-bye.